911 emergency.
Hi, I need help.
Hello?
I need help.
Okay, where are you located? I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you. Are you able to tell me where you're located?
No.
Are you at a...
553 Sheldon Avenue Southeast. Please hurry now.
Okay, I got Sheldon. What's the number?
553. Hurry, please hurry up.
553 Sheldon. Okay, can you tell me what's going on there?
Can you just hurry up, please? I'm gonna die. You're trying to kill me. You already killed my name. You need to hurry up, please.
Okay, ma'am, I'll start the police that way. Can you tell me what your name is?
Kiana.
Who's the person who's causing trouble there?
Please hurry up, man. You about to kill me. Please hurry up.
Okay, I've got a call entered, so we're going to get the police started that way, all right?
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell me what room of the house you're in?
On March 13th, 2019, the quiet neighborhood of Sheldon Avenue SE in Grand Rapids, Michigan, became the scene of a chilling tragedy, one that would send shockwaves across the community and eventually the nation. A 911 dispatcher received a haunting phone call from 25-year-old Kiona Griffin. Her voice was barely audible, shaking with fear as she whispered that her aunt had been shot and she believed she was next. Despite the panic in her voice, the response that followed was tragically inadequate. What happened in that home during those critical hours would expose dangerous gaps in emergency response and lead to one of the most disturbing manhunts in recent years. Kiona wasn't just reporting a crime. She was living through it in real time. Her call wasn't a vague warning. She was explicit. Her aunt, Choletta Baberbay, had been shot, and she herself was hiding, fearing the same fate. She stayed on the line long enough to provide the address, 553 Sheldon Avenue Southeast, but was understandably unable to offer more details. Her bravery in that moment was profound. She did everything she could to save herself and her aunt, but fate, and perhaps a lack of urgency from those who received her call, would soon render her efforts tragically futile. Police arrived at the home shortly after the call. They knocked but received no answer. With no signs of forced entry or visible disturbance, the responding officers left the scene, unaware that Kiona was likely still alive inside, clinging to life and hoping someone would burst through the door to rescue her. Nearly 4 hours later, a family member returned to the house and made a gruesome discovery. Choletta was dead, shot in the back of the head as she lay in bed. Kiona was found shortly after, dead from multiple gunshot wounds, slumped in another room. The tragedy was compounded by the fact that the killer, Darrell Brown, a man Choletta had been romantically involved with, was already gone. Brown had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak, unanswered questions, and a devastated family. As the investigation unfolded, authorities would uncover a troubling pattern in Brown's past and realize they were dealing with a dangerous fugitive. He was later placed on the U.S. Marshal's 15 Most Wanted list, where he remains a prime suspect still at large. This case is more than a heartbreaking story. It's a call for better systems, better emergency response, better vetting in relationships, and better public awareness. Kiona Griffin and Choletta Baberbay lost their lives in an act of brutal violence that could have been prevented. Their story serves as a warning, a lesson, and a plea that no cry for help should ever go unheard, and no warning should ever be ignored. Kiona Griffin was more than just a name in a tragic headline. She was a vibrant, intelligent, and caring young woman with dreams that were just beginning to unfold. At 25 years old, she had a passion for family, a deep sense of loyalty to those she loved, and an unmistakable energy that drew people toward her. Friends and relatives describe her as outgoing and cheerful, someone who could light up a room with her presence. She had her struggles, as most people do, but she never let them define her. Kiona was especially close to her aunt, Choletta Baberbay. Their bond was more than familial, it was sisterly. They lived together in a modest home on Sheldon Avenue SE in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where they supported each other emotionally and financially. For Kiona, Choletta represented stability and kindness. The two shared quiet evenings, cooked meals together, and often spent time watching TV or enjoying each other's company. Their home was their sanctuary, a place of warmth, laughter, and trust. As someone who had experienced hardship, Kiona had developed a strong sense of awareness. She was street-smart, cautious, and careful about whom she let into her inner circle. But even the most vigilant people can fall victim to danger that hides behind a friendly smile. That danger came in the form of Daryl Brown, a man who had formed a romantic relationship with Choletta, but would later be accused of ending both women's lives. Despite her young age, Kiona often played the role of protector. When she suspected that something was wrong with Brown's presence in their lives, she voiced her concerns. She may have sensed tension or picked up on signs that others overlooked. Her instincts were sharp, and she took her fears seriously. So seriously, in fact, that she called 911 that day. Even in her final moments, she was not thinking solely of herself. Her first words to the dispatcher were about her aunt, a testament to her selfless spirit. Though her story ended in tragedy, Kiona's life was filled with hope and ambition. She had aspirations of furthering her education and finding a career where she could help others. Those close to her believed she had the potential to make a real difference in the world. She had shown interest in healthcare, education, and even the arts. Her talents were broad, and her future was wide open, until it was abruptly and violently stolen from her. Family members say that Kiona had a unique way of making people feel understood. She listened intently, offered thoughtful advice, and provided comfort during difficult times. She was a safe space for her younger cousins, often serving as a mentor or a big sister figure. She wanted to see her family thrive, and she was deeply protective of their well-being. This protective nature is what ultimately defined her final act of bravery, reaching out for help, even in terror. The pain of losing Kiona was not just felt by her immediate family. Her extended relatives, friends, and community members were devastated by the news of her death. Her funeral service was attended by dozens who remembered her joyful laugh, her fierce loyalty, and her unwavering love for those around her. Mourners shared stories of her compassion, her humor, and her resilience, painting a vivid picture of a life that touched many. Her name lives on in conversations about domestic violence, justice reform, and 911 response protocols. Kiona's call for help has been replayed in public forums and news outlets, not for shock value, but as a haunting reminder of what's at stake when cries for help go unanswered. Her voice continues to echo, urging society to listen more closely and respond more swiftly to those in danger. For the Griffin family, life will never be the same. They lost not only a daughter and niece, but a bright light who brought joy into their lives. In the aftermath of her death, they've turned their grief into advocacy, hoping to raise awareness about the gaps in emergency services and the red flags in abusive relationships. They want people to remember Kiona not just as a victim, but as a hero, one who tried to save herself and her aunt until the very end. Kiona Griffin should be remembered as more than a tragic statistic. Her story is one of courage, compassion, and love. She lived her life with intention, cared deeply for her family, and faced her final moments with bravery. Her legacy serves as both a warning and an inspiration, to never ignore your instincts, to always speak up, and to demand a world where every voice is heard, especially the ones whispering for help. March 13th, 2019, began like any other day in the Griffin home, but it would end in horror, etched into the hearts of everyone who came to know the story. That morning, Kiona Griffin and her aunt, Choletta Baberbay, were inside their Grand Rapids home on Sheldon Avenue SE.
A person of interest in the murders of two women in March in Grand Rapids could be in Columbus, Ohio. Police there shared these photos of Daryl Brown, originally shared by Grand Rapids police several months ago. He is considered armed and dangerous. Charlotta Baberbay and Kiona Griffin were shot and killed on March 13th. Police say all three of them lived inside a home on Sheldon Avenue Southeast, and Brown was dating Baberbay before she was killed. Back in May, police believed Brown may have been in Atlanta, Georgia.
It was supposed to be an ordinary day, but the growing tension beneath the surface suggested something far more sinister was about to unfold. Unbeknownst to anyone outside that home, their lives were in imminent danger. Sometime before noon, Choletta Baberbay was fatally shot, She had been in a relationship with Daryl Demon Brown, a man with a troubling past and a growing history of violence. Although they had known each other for some time, no one could have predicted that the man who once expressed affection would turn deadly. Choletta's murder was swift and brutal, a tragic betrayal at the hands of someone she had trusted. Kiona was in the house during the murder. She heard the fatal gunshot that killed her aunt and immediately recognized the danger she was in. Her instincts kicked in, and with incredible courage, she called 911. In a hushed voice, filled with fear, she pleaded for help. "Can you please hurry?" she asked the dispatcher. "He's got a gun." Her whisper carried the weight of desperation, yet her call for help would go tragically unheeded. The 911 operator recorded the address, but critical elements of the call were missed. No patrol was immediately dispatched to the home. For over an hour, Kiona remained in the house, alone with the killer. Her fear was unimaginable, hiding, perhaps hoping that the sound of approaching sirens would soon bring salvation. But those sirens never came. The system that was meant to protect her had failed her in her most critical moment. By the time police finally arrived, it was too late. Both Kiona and her aunt were found dead inside the home. Kiona had been shot multiple times. The chilling 911 call would later become a haunting piece of evidence, not only of the violence that took place, but of a systemic failure to act when every second mattered. Her whisper for help became a tragic echo of a life lost too soon. Daryl Brown was nowhere to be found. By the time authorities realized the gravity of what had occurred, he had fled the scene. His face would later appear on wanted posters and be broadcast across the country. As the FBI joined the manhunt for a suspected double murderer, he became one of the nation's most sought-after fugitives, his capture critical not just for justice, but for public safety. The community was in shock. How could a woman be murdered, her niece beg for help, and still be left vulnerable for so long? Questions mounted about the 911 system's protocols and response times. Could the outcome have been different if officers had been sent immediately? Would Kiona still be alive? These unanswered questions haunted not only her family, but an entire city struggling to come to terms with the horror. News of the tragedy spread rapidly, and with it came intense public scrutiny. People listened to the audio of Kiona's 911 call with heartbreak and disbelief. Her calm yet fearful voice became symbolic of so many other voices that go unheard or dismissed. She did everything right, called for help, gave her address, warned about the gun, but still met a horrific end. The police department later acknowledged that the call should have been escalated and acted upon more urgently. The failure became a point of reform in local emergency response policies, but no amount of change could undo what had happened. The realization that a life could slip away, even after reaching out, cast a dark shadow over the community and law enforcement. That day, 2 lives were stolen, and a family was forever broken. Kiona Griffin's final moments were filled with fear, but also an immense bravery. She did what few in her position could do: call for help in the face of imminent death. The tragedy of March 13, 2019, is not only about loss, it's about warning signs, system failures, and the urgent need to better protect those in crisis. It's a day that demands remembrance, not just in mourning, but in the pursuit of justice and reform. Following the devastating discovery of Kiona Griffin and Choletta Baberbay's bodies, Grand Rapids authorities immediately identified a person of interest, Daryl Demon Brown. Brown was known to be Choletta's boyfriend and had a documented history of criminal behavior and violent tendencies. His sudden disappearance after the murders only deepened suspicion. Investigators moved swiftly to piece together his movements in the hours and days following the tragedy. As detectives delved into Brown's background, they discovered an extensive criminal record. He had prior convictions for domestic violence, assault, and weapons possession. Alarmingly, Brown had also previously used aliases to avoid detection. The authorities issued a warrant for his arrest, and his face began to appear on local news broadcasts and online databases. Yet despite their efforts, Brown had seemingly vanished without a trace. The case soon attracted national attention. The public was particularly moved by the haunting 911 call made by Kiona before her death. Media coverage intensified, and the pressure to locate Brown grew. In April 2023, Nearly 4 years after the murders, the FBI added Daryl Brown to its 10 most wanted fugitives list, offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. This move marked a critical escalation, signaling how dangerous and elusive Brown had become. Investigators theorized that Brown may have fled Michigan shortly after the murders and assumed a new identity. They received sporadic tips about potential sightings across different states, but none proved conclusive. The delay in capturing Brown frustrated both law enforcement and the victim's family, who remained in a painful limbo. With every passing month, their grief compounded with the agony of unanswered justice. In the absence of a trial, the legal proceedings stagnated. However, authorities worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Federal charges were added to state-level warrants, broadening the scope of the manhunt. Posters bearing Brown's face were distributed nationwide, and his case was featured on platforms like America's Most Wanted. Still, the fugitive managed to remain just out of reach. The FBI described Brown as armed and dangerous. He was believed to be resourceful and capable of altering his appearance. Agents followed leads in several states, including Georgia and Ohio, where Brown reportedly had connections. Surveillance footage, tips from the public, and digital tracking methods were all employed in the search. Despite these efforts, the trail repeatedly went cold. The lack of closure took a significant emotional toll on the Griffin and Baber families. They mourned not only the loss of their loved ones, but also the failure to hold the perpetrator accountable. Keona's voice on the 911 call served as a haunting reminder of the justice that had yet to be served. Advocates for domestic violence victims and emergency response reform rallied around the family, calling for systemic changes. Legal experts and community leaders also began to scrutinize the broader implications of the case. They questioned how someone with Brown's criminal history could remain undetected for so long and criticized lapses in the legal system that may have allowed him to escape. In response, law enforcement agencies emphasized the complexity of manhunts involving fugitives with multiple identities and transient lifestyles. While no court proceedings had begun due to Brown's fugitive status, prosecutors continued building a strong case. They collected forensic evidence from the crime scene, analyzed digital communications, and secured witness testimonies. The goal was clear. If and when Brown was captured, the prosecution would be ready to present an airtight case to ensure a conviction and deliver justice for Keona and Charletta. To this day, Daryl Demon Brown remains at large, and the legal proceedings are on hold until his arrest. But the search continues, driven by a commitment to justice and the memory of 2 women whose lives were stolen. Law enforcement urges the public to remain vigilant and report any information that may lead to Brown's capture. The pursuit of justice for Keona Griffin and her aunt is not over. It remains an active mission and a solemn promise. The tragic murders of Keona Griffin and Charletta Baber reverberated far beyond the walls of their Grand Rapids home. The haunting nature of Keona's final 911 call deeply unsettled the local community and ignited conversations nationwide about how domestic violence, delayed emergency response, and fugitive apprehension are handled. People were outraged that despite Keona's chilling plea for help, law enforcement arrived too late to save her. In the weeks that followed, vigils were held throughout Grand Rapids. Community members gathered not only to mourn but also to demand accountability. Many questioned why the 911 dispatcher did not treat the call with greater urgency. The fact that Keona named her aunt's killer and feared for her own life made the delayed police response particularly difficult to accept. Protesters and local advocacy groups began to call for reforms in 911 dispatcher training and emergency response protocol. The Grand Rapids Police Department faced intense scrutiny. Officials launched internal reviews and promised to assess how dispatch procedures could be improved to better prioritize high-risk calls. The tragic case underscored the need for dispatcher sensitivity when dealing with frightened callers who may be whispering or speaking in code to avoid alerting a nearby assailant. In schools, churches, and local organizations, conversations about domestic violence and warning signs gained new urgency. Keona's story became a case study in how abusers can manipulate their way into families and how their violence often escalates over time. Her aunt, Charletta, had welcomed Daryl Brown into her life, unaware that he would ultimately be her killer. These discussions stressed the importance of background checks, support systems, and early intervention. Nonprofits and women's shelters in the region reported an uptick in outreach following the tragedy. Survivors who had been living in silence came forward, seeking help before their situations worsened. The ripple effect of Keona's story gave many the courage to speak up. Her voice, recorded in that final call, became a symbol of strength and a reminder that no cry for help should go unanswered. One major lesson that emerged was the need for greater public education on the red flags of coercive control and domestic abuse. While many assume abuse must be physical to be dangerous, Keona and Charletta's case illustrated how manipulation, isolation, and emotional intimidation can be just as deadly. Workshops, podcasts, and local campaigns began focusing on these subtler warning signs. The tragedy also highlighted the importance of maintaining consistent communication with loved ones. Keona had confided in at least one family member about her fear, which helped law enforcement piece together what happened. This emphasized the importance of creating safe environments where people, especially women, can talk openly about their concerns without fear of being dismissed or blamed. Lawmakers in Michigan were also prompted to look at policies around fugitive tracking and offender background checks. Some proposed new laws that would make it easier to monitor individuals with violent criminal histories, particularly those who may change their identity or travel across state lines. It was clear that Daryl Brown's ability to disappear revealed a dangerous gap in the system. In response to the case, the FBI and other agencies enhanced their collaboration with local law enforcement to track fugitives more effectively. Training programs were updated, and new technologies, like facial recognition and data sharing across jurisdictions, were pushed to the forefront. The aim was to ensure that cases like this wouldn't fall through the cracks again. Ultimately, Keona and Charletta's story became a powerful call to action, not just in Grand Rapids, but nationwide. Their loss sparked reforms, strengthened community awareness, and empowered others to seek safety. While their lives were unjustly taken, their memory now serves as a catalyst for change, echoing in every hotline answered promptly and every woman who finds the courage to leave a dangerous situation. The story of Keona Griffin is one that continues to haunt the conscience of many. Her whispered 911 plea, both desperate and brave, became a defining moment in the narrative of missed opportunities and systemic gaps in emergency response. It was a voice that should have been heard more urgently, a life that should have been protected, and a tragedy that should have been prevented. As the case unfolded, Keona became more than just a victim. She became a symbol of overlooked cries for help and the dire consequences that can follow. In reflecting on the events of March 13, 2019, it is impossible to ignore how small oversights culminated in irreversible loss. The dispatcher's decision not to immediately prioritize the call, the delayed arrival of police, and the lack of initial follow-through all played a role in what happened that day. These reflections are not meant to assign blame solely, but rather to identify areas where we, as a society, can and must do better. Charletta Baberbay, Keona's aunt and the first victim of the double homicide, also deserves remembrance. Described as kind, quiet, and deeply loved by her family, she unknowingly invited danger into her home. Her relationship with Daryl Brown, which seemed stable on the surface, tragically ended in betrayal and violence. Her death was the first act in a devastating chain of events that took two innocent lives. The broader question remains, how do we prevent such tragedies in the future? It begins with listening, truly listening, when someone expresses fear or discomfort about a relationship. It also involves taking every emergency call seriously, no matter how unclear, quiet, or unorthodox it may seem. Victims often whisper because they fear being overheard. In those moments, the responsibility lies with trained professionals to interpret and act swiftly. The case also serves as a stark reminder that domestic violence is not always obvious. It doesn't always begin with bruises or raised voices. Sometimes, it begins with control, secrecy, and manipulation. Daryl Brown's actions didn't emerge out of nowhere. As investigators later uncovered, there were red flags in his past, suggesting a pattern of violent behavior. Identifying and acting on such patterns earlier could save lives. As for Brown, he remains at large, and his status as a fugitive only deepens the pain for the families left behind. Despite the FBI's involvement and a reward for information, justice has not yet been served. This lingering absence of closure continues to burden the victims' families and the wider community, who fear that he might harm others if not apprehended. It's a chilling reminder that justice delayed is justice denied.
Rapids, a suspicious death investigation, now a double homicide, as Grand Rapids police continue to search for a suspect.
A man police say who lived with the victims. Their bodies found in a home on Sheldon. GRPD confirmed in just the last hour Daryl Brown lived with Charlotta Baber-Bay and Kiana Griffin.
24-hour News 8's Lindsay McComel is outside of Grand Rapids Police Headquarters with the breaking turn in this investigation and the person of interest's checkered past. Lindsay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A big turn in this, still named as a person of interest, but we do know that he was dating Baber-Bay, and no one has heard from him since someone discovered the victims' bodies yesterday. We learned that they were shot to death, so they now are trying to urgently find Brown. We've also learned that he has a violent criminal history. In 2006, he was charged with assault. A year before that, in 2005, I uncovered a disturbing case with allegations that a former live-in girlfriend made in court. And I do want to warn you that the details of this case are disturbing. Now, that was in 2005. As I mentioned, his then girlfriend testified that he bound and beat her. The transcript shows the woman said that Brown tied her up with cords, kicked her in the face, gagged her so she could not scream, then urinated on her and doused her in lighter fluid, all while her 3 children and the child that she has with Brown were upstairs sleeping. Now, it was also at that time that she had said on the stand that she did not want to see him go to prison because she believed that he needed help. That case was a felony kidnapping case. She had testified during his preliminary hearing for that case. The judge had ruled there was enough evidence to have that case go to trial. However, he ended up in a plea agreement. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor domestic violence in that case. We have not been able to tie together the other outcomes of his cases from 2006, but we also know from police that he has several aliases. So I asked Sergeant Kathy Williams about that.
That definitely makes the investigation more difficult. Not only are we searching all of our databases for someone, but we're having to search by 4, 5, 6, 7 names. And those are only the ones that we know about. If someone is frequently using aliases, there may be others out there that we don't even know about yet. So certainly that does make the investigation more difficult.
It's been 3 years since a killer gunned down 2 women inside their home here on Sheldon Southeast. That house is gone now, bulldozed after fire tore through it, a fire fueled by the heartbreak that came before.
Just after 9 a.m. Saturday, Grand Rapids Fire Department crews were dispatched to Sheldon Avenue Southeast near Logan Street. A spokesperson for the department says a neighbor called 911. Crews arrived to find the front of the house in flames. Crews from multiple departments responded and pulled 2 victims from the home. But a woman was pronounced dead on scene, and a boy was taken to Helen DeVos Children's Hospital, where he later died.
The 2 have been identified as 65-year-old Jacqueline Baber-Bay and 5-year-old Marion Cummings. 50 firefighters went to that home on Sheldon Avenue just after 9 a.m. Saturday. In March 2019, 2 women were killed at that same home. Police are still looking for a suspect in that case.
The Grand Rapids community has since taken steps to honor the memory of Kiana and Charlotta. Murals, public awareness campaigns, and community forums have emerged, turning sorrow into action. Schools and advocacy groups now include the story in their educational outreach, teaching students and families the importance of recognizing early warning signs in abusive dynamics. Perhaps one of the most important reflections is this: the power of a single voice. Kiana's 911 call, though tragically unsuccessful in saving her, has not gone unheard in the larger sense. It has sparked meaningful dialogue and real-world changes in how emergency services handle certain types of distress calls. Her bravery has inspired countless others to speak up, seek help, and refuse to stay silent in the face of fear. In memory of Kiana Griffin and Charlotta Baber-Bay, may we commit to building a culture of vigilance, empathy, and accountability. May we train our ears to detect distress in its subtlest forms. May we offer safe spaces for those in danger to reach out without fear of judgment. And most importantly, may we never forget their names and their stories. As this episode closes, we are reminded that education, awareness, and action are the greatest tools in the fight against violence. Let this be more than a story. Let it be a lesson. And may their legacy continue to shine a light on paths to safety, justice, and healing for others. If Kiona Griffin's story has impacted you, and you don't want to miss the next thrilling episodes, kindly hit the subscribe button and turn the notification bell on to be the first to receive the notification. Share this story with someone you love to raise awareness. See you in our next episode.